My generous neighbors recently gave me a very nice 1990s display cabinet they didn't want anymore. And that sparked the idea for today's two-part challenge. First, let's make the cabinet look a little less 1990s and a little more classic vintage style. Then let's go thrift store shopping and attempt to style the cabinet using nothing but our thrift store finds. Oh, and I should tell you, there is one amazing thrifted find that is going to transform this cabinet, making it unlike any you've seen. I can't wait for you to see the before and after. So let's get started.
My neighbor's curio cabinet is so lovely and in great condition, but the cherry wood is just not my style. So, after some deliberation, I decided to paint it. I know some of you are thinking, no, don't paint that beautiful wood. But please stick with me and then let me know what you think when it's done. I removed the glass shelves, the handles, and the hinges. I don't always remove doors when painting furniture, but this was such a nice piece. I wanted to do it justice, and I didn't want to paint over the hinges this time. Some of the decorative hardware was nailed in place, so using a flathead screwdriver, I carefully pried them off. There was plastic edging on the inside of the doors to help hold the glass in place. I thought about removing it while I painted, but ultimately I decided it would look better just to leave it in place and paint over it. I hate sanding, and so fortunately I have successfully painted many furniture pieces without sanding, like the large cabinet in my dining room. To get a quality finish, first clean the piece really well. I like to use extra fine steel wool and liquid sandpaper, and then wipe it off with a clean cloth. You may want to go over the areas that will get the most wear a second time. Next, apply a good primer. I used a shellac primer. You'll only need one coat, but it's very runny, so take your time and keep a lookout for drips. It is oil-based, so you'll need denatured alcohol to clean your brushes. However, it's still better than sanding. I like to sit furniture on scrap lumber so I can easily paint around the base and the lower portion of the legs. I decided to tape off the edge of the glass panes so I wouldn't have so much paint to scrape off later. Once your primer is dry, you can apply your selected paint. I like to use cabinet and trim alkyd enamel, which provides a smoother, more durable finish than latex paints. But it's water-based, so it can still be cleaned up with soap and water. I chose an olive green paint color because I'm just loving green right now. And I used a small roller to cover as much of the cabinet as possible, and then went back over any missed spots with a brush. I applied 2 coats, wrapping my brush and roller in plastic wrap and putting them in the refrigerator between coats to keep them from drying out. Even if you tape off your glass, there's always going to be a little paint that seeps under the tape. So just use a razor blade scraper to quickly remove it.
You may have noticed that most DIYers on YouTube are a few years younger than I am. And some of you ask where I get all my energy. Well, it certainly helps that I'm doing something that I genuinely love. But I also try to take care of my health. And every day that starts by taking a premium vitamin specifically developed for women over 50. Ritual vitamins have been formulated to fill our nutritional gaps and promote healthy aging.
Ritual uses high-quality, scientifically backed nutrients that support brain health, bone health, blood building, and antioxidant support. And unlike some vitamins, all their ingredients are in bioavailable forms, which means your body actually absorbs them.
If you'd like to give ritual vitamins a try, right now they're offering my viewers 25% off your first month. Just scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description box below. And you have nothing to risk, because if you don't absolutely love your ritual vitamins after 30 days, they'll refund your money, no questions asked.
I didn't bother to tape off the mirror because I knew I was going to cover it with something. We've all seen display cabinets that have been wallpapered, and I love this look. In fact, I've done this before, but I wanted to do something different this time. And when I found a pile of old Currier and Ives calendar prints while I was out thrifting, I knew I had to use them. I wanted to be able to remove the prints without damaging them in case I want to do something different in the future. So I used glue stick to adhere the calendar prints to poster board. I thoroughly covered the back side with the glue stick and used a brayer to smooth it out and remove any air bubbles. Then I carefully cut around the print. I hadn't realized until I got them home that the calendar pages were from different years, as far back as the 1950s and as recent as the 1990s. I had planned on overlapping the pictures in a haphazard arrangement, but I changed my mind when I realized that 6 prints covered the mirror almost perfectly. To attach them, I applied 2-sided tape to the back of the poster board and pressed them in place. Where the pictures overlapped, I made sure the tape was against the mirror and not on the adjoining print. I rolled a brayer over the pictures to get good adhesion to the mirror. I taped a thin strip of poster board under the bottom print to cover a small area of exposed mirror. I don't think anyone will ever notice it. So, what do you think of my Currier and Ives wallpaper? You might think a cabinet like this belongs in the kitchen or dining room, but I think it makes a pretty display piece for the living room with practical storage in the drawers at the bottom. Now for the second half of the challenge, to style the cabinet with nothing but thrift store finds. I headed out through the Illinois countryside to my favorite small town thrift stores, where I always find unique vintage items. Some people might find the Illinois scenery boring, but the sight of cornfields, tractors, and country churches feels like home to me, and I never get tired of it. I forgot to take video of the outside of the store, but once I was inside, the first thing that caught my eye was a collection of clocks. I wish I had taken a closer look at that one in the back. Somehow I didn't notice it at the time. Clearly, someone had recently gotten rid of their owl collection because there were a few shelves filled with owl decor, including this little silver salt shaker. I don't know why I didn't buy it. It's super cute. This ceramic lily pad was a lid with no jar, but it was too adorable to pass up. I did a Google search, and of course, it's a Fitz and Floyd lid from a trinket box. This store always has great old tins, but I already have one that is very similar, so I left this one for someone else to find. I'm regretting that I passed on this bud vase because it's so unique, but I liked this candle stand even more, and I don't even care that the glass is missing. This store always has great vintage wall art. I loved this fruit art. It was gorgeous, except for this creepy animal. What is that even? Next door is another great thrift store that always has lots of vintage china. As you know, I don't have room for any more blue and white dishes, but I always have to look just in case. Red transferware is harder to find than blue. I have only a few pieces, but I think I'll take this cup and saucer. And these strawberry cups were adorable too. Wouldn't these leaf pattern plates make such a pretty fall table setting? I have a typewriter similar to this, but this one is pretty rusty. Does anyone know what this spindle was used for? It's different than most of the spindles I've seen. In case you've noticed, there are no price tags in these stores. You just make a pile of the things you want and they'll tell you what you owe. You could probably barter with them, but their prices are so good that I never do. Okay, let's take our finds and start filling up this cabinet. Originally, I was only going to use one of the 2 glass shelves because I wanted to add this previously thrifted hurricane lamp, but I wasn't loving the spacing. I decided to drill new holes for the shelf brackets so that the shelf would be centered in the cabinet. I measured down a few inches from an existing bracket hole and marked those spots. Then I inserted my drill bit into an existing hole and marked the depth with a piece of painter's tape on my drill bit. When I drilled the new holes, I knew to stop when the tape was even with the wood. I put the shelf in its new spot, which still left plenty of room for the hurricane lamp. Here I am realizing that I thrifted mostly small items, and I don't have many big things to fill these 2 large spaces. Yep, I'm going to need to use both shelves, and there I go to the garage to grab the other one. When I go thrifting, I just buy what I like, so I was surprised at how quickly these shelves came together. I thought the chippy duck, a picture of a quail, and a few feathers looked really nice together. When styling shelves include items of different heights to create visual interest, I like to use books as risers to elevate shorter items. I started with several books on the middle shelf and then added that brass candlestick. I always like to add some greenery to shelves, so rather than add a candle, I added some fern stems. I put a brass and green bowl next to the candle stand and filled it with an old bird nest, which seemed appropriate next to the quail picture that I had moved to this shelf. For the top shelf, I added a small candelabra on one side, and since I had used small art along the back on the other 2 shelves, I used a thrifted brass bowl for variety this time. Layering objects with larger items in the back adds depth to your arrangement. Then I added a stack of books with a vintage clock on top. The clock cord is hidden behind the books. I had thrifted several boxes, so I added a decorative box, a rusty fishing lure box, and a tiny green plastic clock frame. I stuck a few stems of greenery in the hole where the clock face once was. How cute is this? I thrifted this antique silhouette glass art picture from Goodwill. It was slightly damaged and missing its back, so I just put a page of handwriting from an old book on the back and used a business card holder to prop it up next to the brass bowl. Due to the Currier and Ives pictures on the back of the cabinet, I tried to select items in neutral colors that wouldn't detract from the art prints. I intentionally left the doors off until now, just to make it easier to style the cabinet. So now to put everything back together. I attached the hinges to the doors first, and then I did my best to hold the door in place and balance it while I attached the hinges to the cabinet. I didn't show myself attaching the first door because it definitely took me a little while. Luckily, the second door went on quickly. The original cabinet handles were fine, but I rifled through my stash and found some that I liked even better. I think I bought these for 50 cents each. 3 of the drawers needed 2.5-inch wide handles, and 2 drawers needed 3-inch wide ones. And I didn't have any 3-inch handles. So I patched the holes in those drawers with wood filler. Once the filler was dry, I sanded the drawer front smooth and touched up the paint. And once the paint was dry, I drilled 1 center hole so I could add an individual knob to create some variety. Do you like mixing up handles and knobs, or do you prefer when they're all the same? Since this is a special piece of furniture, I wanted to take the extra step to dress up the sides of the drawers by applying some peel and stick wallpaper. I think the colors of this bird wallpaper coordinate well with the Currier and Ives prints. This will just be a nice surprise every time you open a drawer. I adore this wallpaper, and it was only $7.99 for a small roll, and I have some left, so I'm sure you'll see it again in a future video. I knew the cabinet had built-in lights, but I was pleasantly surprised to discover that they were on a dimmer. How fun is that? I've been turning them on low every night. In case you're wondering, I did fill the cabinet with only thrift store finds. Many of them I purchased in the past few days, but I did add a few older items that I pulled from other areas in my home, like the green vase, the brass bowl, and the cuckoo clock weight that I thrifted in Ireland last summer. Okay, now you can let me know if you still think painting the cabinet was a mistake. Thanks so much for watching today. And if you enjoy furniture flips like this, here are 2 other videos I think you'll like. Well, that's all for today. Hope to see you next week.